Jonathan Quick goes into God mode and carries the Rangers to a 2-1 victory over the Boston Bruins. We talk about his excellent performance, plus why I'm anti-tanking as it pertains to the New York Rangers.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1217 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Schick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you will get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers, at long last, winning a hockey game here. They had lost 7 out of 8 coming into this one. And I think as Ranger fans right now, any win that the Rangers get is going to be met with a collective sigh of relief from all of us. And I think we're kind of in a situation now where you'll take it just about any way you can get it as it pertains to the Rangers actually winning a hockey game. And that's exactly what they did last night. And of course, the biggest reason was none other than Jonathan Quick. As I said, basically just going into God mode in this game. Win number 399 of Jonathan Quick's career. And man, did he earn it. Anybody that watched that game, you guys know what I'm talking about. He stopped 32 out of a possible 33 shots, 32 saves on 33 shots. And, you know, my hope coming into this game and this stretch of games here that's on the schedule that's going to be contested without Igor Shesterkin, my hope was that the Ranger skaters will kind of step up their defensive effort a little bit, maybe not having Igor. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like that's a good thing because it's not, but not having Igor, maybe that galvanizes everybody a little bit. Everybody realizes they have to, you know, pull a little bit more weight when it comes to their overall defensive effort. And like I said in the last episode, it should not take an injury to Igor Shesterkin for these guys to collectively realize that. But the bottom line, you don't have your franchise goalie, you don't have your backbone. Maybe that causes guys to, take themselves a little bit more seriously when it comes to their defensive effort. I was hoping that would happen. It didn't really happen in this game. You know, I think the biggest reason that you watch this game and you come away with the impression that the Rangers have not cured all that ails them is the very simple fact that they were basically bleeding scoring opportunities left and right. There were so many long offensive zone possessions for the Bruins in this game that just went on and on and on. The Rangers just did not play well in their own zone at all, but Jonathan Quick was there to obviously back them up. I felt like in the first period, the Rangers' overall team defensive effort was a little bit better, but that might also be sort of a byproduct of both these teams kind of starting slow in this game. In the first 10 minutes or so, it felt like both teams were kind of skating in quicksand, and there wasn't really a whole lot happening. You know, I realized the Rangers eventually got on the board there with a couple of quick strikes. But, you know, early the first few minutes of this game, there was, I don't know if it was a feeling out process. I don't know if, you know, both teams were just having a hard time finding that fifth gear or whatever it was. But if nothing else, the Rangers at least kind of shut it down defensively a little bit in the first period. In fact, in the first period, they only permitted 8 shots on goal for the Bruins. So that was positive. But after that, it was more the same, you know, the rushes at inopportune times. We saw the Bruins get a 2-on-1 with 4 minutes left with the Rangers up by a goal, and that just can't happen. But like I said, Jonathan Quick was the safety net the entire night, and he was really up against it. We'll get to some of his better saves in this game in just a second. But again, to kind of set the stage here, you know, you look at everything that Quick was up against in this game. The Bruins, as I mentioned a second ago, a lot of very, very long offensive zone shifts in the second and third period. There was never really a moment in this game where it felt like Jonathan Quick could catch his breath. He was basically just under a barrage of shots, and even when the Bruins weren't necessarily getting a ton of shots, the puck was always on the Rangers' side of the ice. The second and third period, it felt like the ice was very much tilted in Boston's favor. The other issue here was that the Rangers kept turning the puck over in their own zone. There was a play that Vakanainen made where he's behind the net, and I don't know what happened, if he just lost control of the puck or whatever, but all of a sudden, he has possession of the puck, and then he just doesn't, and the puck is just slowly sliding across the ice right into the center of the Rangers zone. The Bruins come up, they get a scoring chance. The puck does stay out, but that was another thing too. You know, the Rangers just could not clear the puck out of their zone in this game. There's a good amount of times where it felt like the Rangers could, force the puck into the neutral zone or skate it out, and the puck just would not come out. And the offensive zone possession goes on even longer for Boston. So Quick was really up against it. There were a lot of factors working against him in this game, but he made one awesome save after the next to kind of go ahead and highlight some of his bigger and better saves in this game. There was one in the first period that may not necessarily make the highlight reel, but it was a very nice save that he made against Geeky, and I felt like this was a really important save. Basically, Geeky has a one-timer. Quick has to move quickly to his right to make the save. Just a really hard shot by Geeky there. Really connected on it well. And this was late in the first period. Now, the Rangers are up 2-0 at this point in the game. And like I said, I think the first period was overall their best period of the night, not just because of the 2 goals, but certainly better defense in that period than we saw in the second and third periods. But this just felt like such a big save because it's getting late in the first period. If the Bruins score here, now it's 2-1. Obviously they're very much within striking distance. And just the way that everything has gone recently for the Rangers, when things go bad, whenever something unfortunate happens in a game, you kind of have that ominous feeling right now as a Ranger fan, or at least I do, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well, that it's just going to snowball and the Rangers are going to lose control of this game and they're going to give up a couple of goals in rapid succession. We've seen a couple instances of that recently, during this long losing streak that they've had over the past couple of months here. So you just don't want that to happen. Obviously, Quick shut the door there and made sure that it did not happen. But, whereas last year, something like that happens, you shrug it off and you keep going and you figure the Rangers are going to, push back and retake control of the game in fairly short order. That feeling just isn't there anymore. At least it's not for me. I can't speak for everybody, but I get the feeling I'm certainly not alone in that boat. So that was a big save there at the end of the first period. The second period, this was kind of one of his more chaotic saves of the evening. There's a situation where he makes a couple of saves, but the puck gets behind him. He's reaching back to try to keep the puck out of the net. And then a great play by Schneider here, finding the puck, staying calm enough not to knock the puck into his own net, but also getting there in short order, getting his stick on the puck, keeping it from crossing the goal line, and basically just sweeping it out of there. So Quick got a little bit of help from Braden Schneider on that play. And then this sequence in the second period was just absolutely phenomenal. 3 consecutive saves made. This is one of those plays where I had to watch the replay a couple of times just to make sure I was aware of literally everything that happened, because there were like 4 attempted shots in the span of like 2 or 3 seconds here. That's pretty much what it felt like. But basically, you get a shot by the Bruins from the blue line. It gets knocked down. And then you got a backhand try by Kastelik from the slot. A great save there. Quick is able to get his glove on it. Not able to corral the puck, but he gets his glove on it to keep it out. And then Will Borgen, unable to clear the puck for the Rangers. It gets knocked down. You get another shot in deep by Brazo, and that's also denied by Quick. And then this one was just ridiculous. The puck goes over to the right side a little bit. So a little bit of a sharp angle here from Beecher, but I think he's going to bury this, more likely than not. And Quick, basically on his stomach, reaches up with his glove and just snags it and holds for the play stoppage. The look on the Bruins players' faces pretty much told you the story. And this was as loud as the Garden crowd had been the entire night. Now, keep in mind, the Rangers are up 2-0 at this point. And obviously, anytime the Rangers score, there's going to be a certain amount of noise in the building. But this is what seemed to really get people going, really electrify them. You get those quickie chants, coming from the Garden faithful there. And just awesome to see. Like I said, there were cheers, obviously, after the goals, but I think, a lot of the Ranger fans in attendance, they're feeling the same way that we are right now. We're obviously all aware of the fact that this team has played very poorly recently. And again, whenever something goes bad, whenever you're kind of just waiting for something to go wrong and for it to snowball at this point. And maybe the fans in the building were feeling that too, but this kind of got them going a little bit. This kind of woke them up a little bit. And I think the crowd was kind of, in this game more from this point on than maybe they had been for the first half or so of this game. But, the third period, another big couple of saves there. You get a save by Quick on Pasternak from the high slot. There's a rebound. Quick basically just goes flailing to his right to deny McAvoy. I still can't tell if he got this shot from McAvoy with his stick or with his blocker. It basically just happened in a flash. But either way, Quick's moving to his left, has to go back to his right. Just a phenomenal saves there. You get more quickie chance. And a couple of saves in the third period down the stretch as well. But Quick was just awesome in this game. It's interesting because you look at the shots on goal, it was only 33-27 in favor of the Bruins. I thought that it would probably be more lopsided than that when I checked the stats a little bit, earlier this morning here. And I'll elaborate on that in just a little bit in the next section. I'm going to talk about the Rangers creating a couple more scoring chances in this game. But as for Quick, obviously the first star of the game. Anybody that watched this game, even if it's your first time watching hockey, you could very much tell that would be the case. Joe Micheletti said something pretty funny. He said, if it's not Jonathan Quick, I quit. Because by that point, they had already given the third star to Mika. He scored a goal. They had given the second star to Berard. He scored what turned out to be the game-winning goal that gave the Rangers a 2-0 lead. That was Berard's first goal in Madison Square Garden and also his first NHL game winner. But then obviously, Jonathan Quick gets the first star of the game. And, in the last episode, we were talking about Jonathan Quick and we're talking about the injury to Igor and we're talking about everything the Rangers have to do to, survive Igor's absence. I floated the idea. It was just an idea. I'm not campaigning hardcore for it or anything like that. I floated the idea of Jonathan Quick being traded because if the Rangers do continue to struggle, if they do continue to lose, if the season continues to go downhill and the playoffs become completely out of reach, then Jonathan Quick could probably get you something in return. He does have a 20-team no-trade list, but my feeling there was just like, okay, well, if this is Quick's last season, and we don't know if it is or not, but it gets to a point where it's like maybe he'd like to be on a winner. You could do right by Jonathan Quick near the trade deadline. It all depends what he wants. He's close to home. He's from Connecticut. So obviously, being a Ranger fan growing up, I'm sure this is a lot of fun for him. But if he wants to keep playing, to elaborate on what I said yesterday, I'm all for giving him a 1-year extension. I think he's done a really nice job in that Ranger locker room. And as I mentioned on Twitter a little bit earlier this morning, I feel like he's almost become basically the unofficial captain of this team. So he plays an important role for them in that leadership role as well. A couple of quotes to kind of back that up here. We got Brett Berard talking about Quick. This is what he had to say about him. Every day I come to the rink, he's the first one to say hi. We have team gatherings and he's always with us, the young guys, making sure that we're fitting in with everybody. He's a special guy and someone I'm super grateful to be around early in my career and to learn from. He's a legend in this game. It's pretty cool to watch him. And then Riley Smith was asked about him as well, talking about Quick's performance here. It's everything. He's so calm and collected. He makes 3 huge saves in a row, and he just goes about like nothing just happened. He does a good job kind of setting momentum for us. I think he did a huge job just pretty much taking a win for us tonight. He made some saves that probably would have went in, and that changes the momentum of the game and gives us a little bit of cushion. So you could tell, even watching the interactions on the ice and the players going over and talking to Jonathan Quick, you can tell how important he is to this team, how much he means to some of these guys. Again, it depends how things go moving forward. It also depends on what Jonathan Quick wants as far as whether you move him before the trade deadline or not. But if the Rangers can get back into this thing, if Jonathan Quick wants to be here for one more season, the Rangers can come to some kind of an agreement with him on a 1-year extension. I'm open to that as well. I know some people want to see Dylan Garand. He'll get here eventually. Just be patient with Garand. He's obviously played very well in the AHL this season, but Jonathan Quick's done a phenomenal job. For my money, probably the best backup goalie in the NHL at this point. And, I think in a locker room setting, he's very important there as well. So it could go either way. We shall see. But yeah, Jonathan Quick obviously stole this game for the Rangers last night. It was the biggest reason why the Rangers won this game last night. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Going to shift our attention to the Rangers generating more offense in this game. You wouldn't know it based on the fact that they only scored 2 goals, but I think they did improve in that area, and I'll explain why in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers, as always, for hanging out, talking Ranger hockey and going through this rough patch. Hey, we got to celebrate a win in today's episode, so that's awesome. It feels so much better coming on here talking about a win rather than a loss. Like I said, any way you can get it right now, you got to take it if you're a fan of this team. But for the everydayers, in our next episode, going to be talking about Rangers at Caps. That game occurs on Saturday at noon, so an early start time there. And we'll talk about that. And then the day after, Rangers at Blackhawks, we'll have an episode on that game as well. That Blackhawks game is Sunday at 3 o'clock. So, yep, back-to-back this weekend. Definitely looking forward to that. But I want to shift our attention now to the Rangers stepping things up offensively. And like I said just a minute ago, if you just look at the final score of this game, 2-1, and you consider the fact that the Rangers only scored 2 goals, and they were both in the first period, and they were both within the first 13 minutes of this game. They went 47 plus minutes without a goal after that. You might think that, well, kind of a nothing showing from the Rangers offensively. I disagree, though. I think the biggest issue that the Rangers had in this game, and the issue that you look at and you kind of wonder if things really are going to pick up after this, it's the defensive effort. And I'm not even so sure if it's effort in this one. It's just the execution wasn't there. The Rangers they bleed odd man rushes, and they were back on their heels so much in the second and third periods in this game. The Bruins just would not give up control of the puck in the Ranger zone, and Jonathan Quick obviously had to bail the Rangers out in many instances. But I think offensively, the Rangers picked things up, and this despite the fact that, like I just said, the Rangers were back on their heels for a big portion of the night. The Rangers actually produced a good amount of scoring chances in this game. It's just that they did it in a very different way than the Bruins did. With the Bruins, like I said, possession, maybe winning some board battles, some 50-50 pucks, recovering the puck in the Rangers zone, basically just blistering quick with shots, and again, maintaining possession in the O zone. With the Rangers, they got chances, but they all felt like they were these kind of quick striking chances, which on one hand, that is kind of nice to see because we're so used to seeing the Rangers be susceptible to getting hurt by the rush. So it's nice to see the Rangers actually create some scoring chances off of the rush. It's nice to see the Rangers move the puck in transition fairly well, get through the neutral zone better in this game than they've been doing in other games, get into the offensive zone and create some chances kind of out of nowhere in a couple of different instances. You look up and down the lineup. I think the Mika line looked a little bit better in this game. Again, I realize that's a very low bar based on what we've seen from these guys in the recent stretch of hockey here. But, some decent scoring chances. Obviously, Mika scored a goal off of the rush, kind of a chaotic play where the Rangers are swarming in the offensive zone. And nobody could really tell if it was Smith or Mika. It ends up being Mika. But, there was that. We saw Chris Kreider almost get an assist. He's still stuck on just 1 assist for the game. But there was a play in this game kind of early where he circled the net, got control of the puck, protected the puck from the defender, centered it to Riley Smith. Smith was going right to the net. And Smith was denied on a very nice save by Jeremy Swayman on that play. But, baby steps. I think that line looked better. And I think this is something else that was encouraging. There were a lot of instances in this game where it felt like there was a little more chaos in the offensive zone for the Rangers in a good way. More traffic in front of the net. Couple of chances where you could actually believe that this team might actually score a dirty goal. I think the Filipino line certainly, had a couple of instances there. I think Lafreniere really stood out in that way in this game. Lafreniere had a couple of different chances, and I don't know if this is the game plan for this line, but there were a lot of different instances in this game where, Panarin would have the puck along the boards, or Trocheck would have the puck along the boards, or, something. They'd be in the offensive zone, and you would see Lafreniere, very quickly move toward the net at a couple of different, spots in this game where Panarin or Trocheck would feed him a pass, looking for that tip-in opportunity. There were a couple of times where Lafreniere came very, very close to scoring on plays such as this. He was getting to the net, crashing the net, causing a little bit of chaos, and just better saves by Jeremy Swayman. Lafreniere, I don't know if you would call it highway robbery, but there were at least 2 or 3 different times in this game where he was right on the doorstep there, and it was looking like there was a very good chance that he was about to score. There was also an instance where, and he's got to shoot the puck here, they had a 2-on-1 early in this game, and he tries to force a pass to Trocheck despite the fact that the defenseman has the pass guarded and despite the fact that somebody is back checking. So instead of Lafreniere, taking the shot, he tries to force it through 2 defenders, and it obviously didn't work. But Lafreniere, like I said, came close on a couple of different instances in this game where he was on the doorstep, and that was encouraging to see. So I'm going to call this right now, put Lafreniere down for a goal in the next game. He's been struggling lately. The entire team's been struggling lately. I think I heard them say last night that Lafreniere has only 1 goal in his last 18 games. This is as consistently close to scoring as we've seen Lafreniere in quite some time. So give me a Lafreniere goal in the next game. Let's all just speak it into existence together. Rangers need back-to-back wins. Hasn't happened since the middle of November, I think was the last time. So they're due. Got to come out swinging against the Capitals, who obviously are having a heck of a season thus far. There was the Mika goal. I talked about that. They score on a rush. I saw something where the Rangers are 12-3 when scoring first, which, I mean, without doing the math, I can't even imagine how bad their record must be when they don't score first. But it was nice to see Mika score on the rush. And then, I talked about the Lafreniere, the 2-on-1 where he didn't shoot. Brett Berard did not make that same mistake. He once again from in close, they're in there on the rush, 2-on-1, the pass is taken away, and Berard just snaps a quick shot and beats Swayman clean, which was very difficult to do in this game, obviously. I mentioned the Hedo line not too long ago. There was an instance in the second period, I believe it was, where Hedo gets in deep, dangerous shot after powering his way to the net. Cooley gets the rebound, just better saves by Jeremy Swayman. I think overall, like I said, this was a much better offensive showing by the Rangers, even if the final goal total does not indicate it. Bottom line, Jeremy Swayman was very good in this game. Not quite as good as Jonathan Quick, which is why the Rangers won, but he was very good. Steve Valiquette, he's got his clear sight analytics that he posts on Twitter, and this basically just measures the expected goals scored for each team. And I always find this very interesting because, he takes a look at high danger scoring chances, medium danger, low danger. Valiquette had the Rangers at 9 high danger scoring chances in this game. The Bruins also had 9. And he had the Rangers at an expected goal total of 4.11, whereas he had the Bruins at 3.46. So if you look at it this way, it wasn't really just a stolen win for Jonathan Quick. I tend to still put it in that category just because of how good Quick was and the fact that he was far and away the best player on the ice. But this also goes to show that the Rangers did indeed create some scoring chances in this game, and you just hope that they start to fall and they start to find their way into the net. It's nice that they won a game despite not being the case, but you hope that they can continue this offensive push into the next game. They're certainly going to need to against the Capitals because, like I said, the Capitals are off to a heck of a start this season, best record in the Eastern Conference. So got to keep everything rolling. I want to shift our attention in just a second to the entire concept of tanking and why I frankly despise it. I will elaborate on that in just a second. All right. We just want to thank everybody, as always, for tuning into the Locked On New York Ranger podcast. And we want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? It's definitely happened to all of us. We've all had a few subscriptions that we didn't even realize that we were paying for. And Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, keeping everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Figured we can close out today's episode by talking about just sort of a concept that I think in the last couple of years, not just among Ranger fans, not even just among hockey fans, among sports fans in general, has run completely amok and gotten completely out of control. And that's this entire concept of tanking. This has really popped up big, I would say, in the last 5 years, maybe the last 10 years. But let me just say, because right now, the way things are going for the Rangers, you hear people talking about tanking, right? Let's tank and try to get the best draft pick, try to get the one draft pick, whatever it might be. I absolutely despise the entire mindset of tanking. I just don't have patience for fans that basically throw in the towel at the first sign of adversity. I know things are bleak for the Rangers, but you see across all sports, like I was saying just a minute ago, a team is 10% of the way through their season, 15% of the way through their season, and you've got half the fan base talking about tanking and let's just keep losing and let's get the best pick and blah, 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 blah. And I just don't like that. I think where you see it the most is in football. You'll see a team start the season 1-3 or maybe even 1-2. And again, half the fan base wants them to just throw in the towel, give up on the season, do whatever you can to lose and get the best draft pick possible. How about fight back and try to win? You'll have fans saying this about their 1-2 team when the team with the best record in the division is like 2-2, or maybe your team is 1-3 and the best record in the division is 2-2. How about fight back and try to get back into it? And I feel the same way across the board for pretty much all sports. Fight back and try to get back into the race here. And I also want to mention right here a very, very important distinction between tanking and selling. To me, these are two very, very different things. Selling, I'm not anti-selling. Selling is a lot more practical. And if you're in a situation where your team is just lousy and they're miles away from the last playoff spot and things are going bad and you've got some guys on expiring contracts or otherwise that can fetch a really good return and set you up for success in the future, I completely understand that. And I'm completely okay with that. If we get to the trade deadline and the Rangers are 8, 10, 12 points out of the last playoff spot, sell. Sell the guys that you can sell and try to get yourself set up for the future. That's understandable. However, that doesn't mean that after you've done that, even if the Raiders do sell, and even if they do have to trade a lot of these players that are currently on their roster, that doesn't mean that we then throw in the towel for the season and just give up and root for this team to just do nothing but lose and lose and lose. I'm certainly not going to do that at the trade deadline, and I'm even more certainly not going to do that right now because we've got more than half this season to go here. The Rangers have played 37 games. There's a long way to go. And really, I mean, nobody is dead and buried in the Eastern Conference. So, like I said, I'm not willing to give up this early. I'm not going to sit here for the rest of the season. The final, how many games would that be? Doing some quick math, I believe 45 games remain. Yeah, 45 games remain. I'm not going to root for the Rangers to lose every single one of them just so they can move up from, like, I don't know, the 10th overall pick to the 8th overall pick. I'm not going to do that. That's just not worth it to me. I want to root for my team to win. So that's what selling is. Selling is things aren't going our way. It's near the trade deadline. We have to get some assets, move some veteran players out of here, look to the future a little bit, but then we're going to continue to try to win once all those moves are made, even if the roster looks a little bit weaker on paper. Tanking for me is essentially, it's basically sabotage. It's such a just weak mindset. It's when a team is basically doing everything in its power to do nothing but lose games. They don't play the right players. They don't really have players they're giving an honest effort. That's not good. I think that what's far more important than moving up a couple of spots in the draft by losing a bunch of games down the stretch is establishing a winning culture. And here's the thing about tanking. Here's the real kicker that nobody ever talks about. I don't think it works very often. I don't think there have been a lot of instances in sports history where a team truly does everything in its power to go out there and do nothing but lose and just get slaughtered week in and week out, and then it pays off in a major way in the future. There's probably examples of it, and maybe that's a deep dive for a future episode. We'll probably limit it to hockey. Look, I know there's a lot of phenomenal number one overall picks, but I doubt how many of those teams were truly doing everything possible to lose. So to me, what's more important than purposely losing games is trying to establish a winning culture. Even if the Rangers do sell, the guys that are still here, let's try to turn things around. Let's try to win some games down the stretch. Let's try and fight and scratch and claw and stay in this playoff race. Maybe even squeeze out, a playoff spot at the end of the season. And as I say all this, this reminds me very much of a team that I mentioned a little bit earlier in today's episode. That would be the Washington Capitals. The Caps, getting toward the trade deadline last year, they were sellers. They moved no fewer than 3 veteran players off of that roster, but they kept going. They kept fighting. They kept scratching and clawing and fighting their way into the playoffs. They won a lot of games down the stretch. Ovechkin went on like a crazy heater toward the end of the season last year, and they eventually pulled themselves over the finish line, made it into the playoffs. And obviously the Rangers basically just sent them packing. They swept them in the first round there. I don't think the Capitals might have had the lead in game 4 briefly, but the Rangers largely dominated that series. I think that was the only game that the Capitals even led at one time or another. I think they scored the first goal, if I'm remembering correctly. But the bottom line, look where the Capitals are now. Again, they sold at the trade deadline last year. They moved a couple of veteran players that they felt that they needed to move. They got some assets, but they kept fighting. They kept battling. They kept playing with a bunch of urgency and scratching and clawing their way back into the playoff race. They make the playoff race, and now look where they are this season. And I realize, they retooled the roster a little bit. They bring in Jacob Trickren. They bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, among other moves. But the bottom line, you can't tell me that the Capitals right now would be in a better position that they are if they had tanked, if they had purposely sabotaged their own season just for the sake of moving up a couple of spots in the draft. And one of the more ridiculous things that I've seen out there is the idea that the Ranger players are tanking, that the Ranger players, now it's one thing to question their effort, and God knows we've done that a bunch of times on this podcast, but the idea that they're losing like almost on purpose for the idea of getting a better pick in the draft, that to me is just beyond ridiculous. Think about the situation some of these Ranger players are in right now. Artemi Panarin has 1 year left on his contract after this one. Do you think he's tanking? Do you think he's even once thinking about where the Rangers are going to pick in the upcoming draft? Chris Kreider, he's on the trade block right now. Why would he tank? And again, we can question the effort of some of these players for certain games here. I completely understand that. But the idea that like Chris Kreider is going to go out there and tank so the Rangers can get a better draft pick, how about like Riley Smith? He's a UFA at the end of the season. Do you really think Riley Smith is going to care whether the Rangers pick 5th or 9th or 14th this upcoming draft? He doesn't care. He's going to be on his way anyway. And then there's guys on this team that are playing for new contracts, guys that are still on their ELC, guys that are looking for a significant raise and looking to make 7 figures for the first time. I really don't think that somebody like Zach Jones is going to go out there and tank when the Rangers let him play, which isn't very often recently, but you get the idea. There's plenty of other examples I can go through, but again, you can question the effort of certain players, but the idea that they're doing it on purpose to get a better draft pick, there's no way. And like I said, to bring this whole thing full circle here, the thing that is more important than moving up a couple of spots in the draft is very simply establishing a winning culture, getting some of these young guys, ready for their NHL careers. You've got Brett Berard. He obviously scored the game-winning goal in this one. We're probably going to see Brian Hoffman pretty soon. Could see Dylan Garand at some point. Maybe Mancini's back at some point. Establish that winning culture, just like the Capitals did last year. Even after they sold, they kept fighting, they kept battling. They made their way to the playoffs. That's what the Rangers could do. Even if the Rangers, if they squeak into the playoffs this year and lose in the first round, if they don't make the playoffs, whatever it is, you have to keep a positive mindset, and tanking is not a positive mindset. And like I said earlier, I don't think it really works out that often for teams that look to actively tank. So again, bottom line, I think I've made this pretty clear by now that I just do not like tanking. It's the amount of fans in recent seasons that just wholeheartedly endorse that idea, that concept. I'm just not on board with that. A lot of people watching or listening to this, I'm sure that they played sports in the past. Maybe they're playing sports currently. Do you enjoy losing? Because that's what you're asking, these Ranger players to do, the people that are in favor of tanking. And I realize, like, high school, college level, there's no draft, right? So, you don't have that to consider, the fact that losing would give you a better draft pick. But still, I mean, the more important thing is to establish a winning culture, especially for players that are going to be back on their team the upcoming season. By the way, for everybody like consumed with where the Rangers are going to pick in the NHL draft, the draft is more than 6 months away. The NHL has not even announced a date for the draft yet. That's how far away we are from this happening. Now, we might occasionally on here take a look ahead to the draft, do a mock draft, talk about this player or that player. We might do that from time to time, but it's not going to be our whole world here on Locked On New York Rangers. We've got it, more than half the season to go here. There's a lot of things that have to happen. We're wondering, who's going to be on this team past the trade deadline, what the Rangers might do. That's where the focus is going to be. And right now, the focus is going to be hopefully on a winning streak, which hasn't happened since the middle of November. Hopefully, the Rangers can win their next game and accomplish exactly that. But, yep, we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. And definitely give us a follow on Twitter @LO_NY_Rangers. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.